partway through when Jackie's talking. We're going to start again. Right, we've got it planned. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello. Hi. I just have a little bit of some words that Rita put together about Glen's life, and so I'm just opening up with a little bit of a synopsis of his life. So we gather here today to honor and celebrate the life of Glen, a devoted husband, father, brother, and friend. Born on September 13th, 1948 in Powassan, Glen was the eldest of 8 siblings. From an early age, he learned the values of hard work and perseverance, growing up in a family deeply involved in the trucking business. Life took Glen on many adventures, starting with frequent moves in his childhood. His family's first big move was to Ironbridge when he was just 5 years old, only to return to Trout Creek a year later. There, he attended a public school before the next journey took them to Maniwaki, Quebec. This transition was a cultural shock for the family, but Glen embraced the challenges with his usual resilience, even finding creative ways to control the local rodent population with his pellet gun. As a young man, Glen was never afraid of hard work. He found employment in mining, dedicating himself to a demanding but rewarding career. His adventurous spirit took him to various places, including Port Hardy on Vancouver Island, where he and Rita spent 3 years. He working in an open pit mine and she at the Bank of Nova Scotia. But fate had other plans. Heavy rains drove them off the island, leading them to the Yukon in 1977, where they built a life filled with cherished memories. Their daughter Stacy was born in Whitehorse in 1978, further solidifying the Yukon as a special place in their hearts. At the age of 32 in 1980, Glen decided to leave his mining job and take on a new challenge as a prospector. He staked a claim and spent 2 years mining 3.5 miles of creek bed. It was an arduous endeavor, often requiring him to be away from his family for months at a time. Their work was grueling, and after 2 years, Glen made the decision to return to Whitehorse, where his ever-loving wife was waiting for him. After all those years of living in sin, Glen and Rita officially tied the knot in 1982. In the spring of 1983, an opportunity arose for them to move back to North Bay. In partnership with Becky, Kirby, and Tracy, they became the next generations of owners of Hummel Brothers Trucking. Unfortunately, 3 years later, the Milne and Sons lumber mill ceased operations, bringing an end to Hummel Brothers Trucking. Despite life's challenges, Glen and his family built a beautiful home on Roy Drive, where they have lived for 42 years. Before retiring at age 50, Glen worked as a short-haul truck driver, embodying the same dedication and work ethic that had defined his life. Even in retirement, Glen never truly slowed down. Owning 160 acres of land, he always found ways to keep busy, tending to his chores and ensuring everything was just the way he liked it. Above all else, Glen's greatest love in life was his family, his home, and his dogs. He was a man of strength, kindness, and unwavering devotion, a provider, a storyteller, and a source of warmth for those fortunate enough to know him. His journey may have come to an end, but his legacy will live on in the hearts of everyone he touched. Rest easy, Glen. You will be deeply missed, but never forgotten.
Nice. Introduce me, please.
So I'm introducing my Aunt Jackie, who is now going to tell you a few fun stories that she's had growing up with Glen.
Yeah, so. Before Glen and I became in-laws, Glen and I were actually friends.
Outlaws.
But prior to being friends, I couldn't stand the jerk. I thought he was the biggest loser I ever met. He was Becky's big brother. I think I was half scared of him. You know how that works when you read of these guys. He was older than I was. But I don't know why he and I were ever standing together, but I looked at him, he was looking at me, and I said, yeah, what's your problem? Because I really didn't like him. And he said, oh, you're fat.
What?
I said, pardon? He says, you're fat. I said, Glen, I am not. Anyway, he reached over and I had this big roll hanging over my slacks, and he grabbed, twisted it, and he said, you are fat. And I was heartbroken. I was devastated. Like, in my mind, I was not fat, I'll tell you that much. So anyway, I had this old gray sweater. And this was coming on to summer, and trust me, it was a hot summer. So my sister Carol, I wore it every day. Anytime I left the farm, I had this old sweater on. My sister Carol kept saying, oh, Jackie, you gotta lose that sweater. Like, lose that sweater. Like, get rid of that sweater. And finally, I told her why I was wearing this sweater. And she said, oh, he was just teasing. Glen was just having fun with you. And I said, well, no, he wasn't. Glen sometimes dropped into their house and they'd watch a hockey game or something together. So Carol said, well, you know what? You're going to have to sit down and talk to him. You're going to have to clear the air about this. So in behind the Catholic church, we had a little ball diamond. And in the evenings, we always went and played a game we called Scrub. Now, Scrub was good because you could have 40 fielders. And you didn't get to move up. Because, you know, if you have 40, somebody had to go out before you became 39 and 38. And anyway, somebody corked the ball way over our heads. So Glen and I were running, trying to get the ball. I wanted to beat him so bad, and I was racing. He gets the ball and he turfs it into home. I said, Glen, I have to talk to you. He's kind of looking at me. I said, Glen, you really are my vision. I was bawling, and he finally looked at me and he said, oh, per you. He's telling him, I knew I couldn't no longer play ball, so I was walking down Patton's to get a pop of some sort, and I just, all of a sudden I started feeling lighter and feeling pretty good about myself. Yeah. And Glen taught me a wonderful lesson. Don't ever let anybody say anything to you that would make you feel so badly about yourself. And I thank him to this day because nobody has ever done it since. As we went through the summer and into the fall and winter, our groups, the guys and the girls, kind of started coming together because the young girls were interested in the older guys, and the older guys don't like the young chickens, you know? So we started intermingling, and we were at a lot of parties together. And at these parties, I learned how to strum a guitar. And back in the day, you could sing any country tune in 3 chords. If you could play 3 chords, you could sing these tunes. So we'd go to these parties, be it a pit party, field party, porch party, house party, lots of parties. Glen and Terry Timpano always wanted to sing El Paso. If you know anything about the tune, it's over 4.5 minutes long. So they were sitting beside each other, and Terry was singing away, and he had a beautiful voice. And he forgot words. He had them all messed up. He said, I have to stop. Glen says, no, you don't. Glen started singing, not necessarily in the right key, but there was a lesson there for me too. You don't have to be the prettiest voice in the choir as long as you can remember the words. Glen always had the words. Oh, now where am I?
This is where
This is where they're gonna sing, Jackie. This is where they're singing
Oh,
now.
and now we're going to, in honor of Glen, sing El Paso. For 10 minutes. Whenever you guys are ready.
I understand everybody has the words, right?
Yes, we're going to
Good.
help you.
You can drown
Sing
me
for
out.
Glen.
Okay. Out in the West Texas town of El Paso, I fell in love with a Mexican girl. Nighttime would find me in Rose's Cantina. Music would play and Carolina would whirl. was strong for this Mexican maiden. I was in love, but you ain't, I could tell. One night a wild young cowboy came in, wild as the West Texas wind. Dashing and daring, a drink he was sharing with wicked Felina, the girl that I loved. So in anger I challenged his right for the love of this maiden, that when his hand for the gun when he wore. My challenge was answered in less than a heartbeat. The handsome young stranger lay dead on the floor. Just for a moment I stood there in silence, shocked by the foul evil deed I had done. Many thoughts ran through my mind as I stood there. I had but one chance, and that was to run. Out through the back door of roses I ran, out where the horses were tied. I picked a good one that looked like it could run, up on his back and away I did ride, just as fast as I could from the West Texas town of El Paso out to the badlands of New Mexico. Back in El Paso my life would be worthless, everything's gone in life, nothing is left. It's been so long since I've seen the young maiden, my love is stronger than my fear of death. I saddled up and away I did go, riding alone in the dark. Maybe tomorrow a bullet may find me, worse than this pain in my heart. And at last here I am on the hill overlooking El Paso. I can see Rosa's cantina below. My love is strong and it pushes me onward. Down off the hill to Felina I go. To my right, I see 5 mounted cowboys. Off to my left, right, a dozen or more. Shouting and shooting, I can't let them catch me. I have to make it to Rosa's back door. Something is dreadfully wrong, for I feel a deep burning pain in my side. Harder to stay in the saddle, I'm getting weary, unable to ride. But my love for Felina is strong, and I rise where I've fallen. Though I am weary, I can't stop to rest. I see the white puff of smoke from the rifle. I feel the bullet go deep in my chest. Out of nowhere, Felina has found me, kissing my cheek as she kneels by my side. Cradled by 2 loving arms that I'll die for, one little kiss and Felina.
Oh, Glen would be so happy. I think he was at that party again. And I was looking at Terry, he was at
actually sing along.
Good one, Carrie.
So of course, as I mentioned, we did a lot of partying. And this is where Howard and our memories aren't the same on this one. I can remember Glen sitting in the corner, usually by himself, well not usually, but sometimes by himself, laughing and taking having a party all by himself. Laughing. Howard remembers him always sitting at the end of the table, sleeping. So we had this huge ball tournament. Teams were coming in from Toronto. We had a nice ball tournament. But then, well, he drank too fast, and he was sleeping at the end of the table. And somebody said, "Oh, we got to get him out of here." So Howard and Harold take him, and they're walking him home. And it wasn't that far to go, really, because you just came out of the hall. We didn't have those fences there then. We just walked across the schoolyard, a couple of doors down, and there was Graw's house. Now, Glen always called his grandmother Graw. I don't know why, but it was Graw. So the boys are walking up the driveway, and we see that grandma's at home. And so they just open up the door and kind of shove him in. But they heard Graw say, "Oh, Glen, look what your friends have done to you." I didn't have to have my laugh card. You guys know when to laugh. Anyway, yeah, so Graw wasn't home. We had a lot of fun, didn't we, Howard, Terry, Becky was here with it. We had a lot of fun. But anyway, fun like knocking over outhouses. Somebody would slight one of us and we'd go. Francis Rick always had access to a bunch of eggs. And we'd run around like hay-mouse finding nests of them. And we'd egg somebody's house just because we felt that they said something they shouldn't have. The boys always jumped in the cars and they'd head for a place like White Oak in Temiskaming. They never invited us, but anyway, that was their thing. But Howard recalls one night they were coming home. It was already snowing when they got there, but of course, once you get into a hotel, you sit there for 3 or 4 hours, and one of them finally grabbed a brain and decided they should get on the road. And Glen's driving. I didn't like Glen's driving. Glen was driving, Howard was sitting in behind him. And Howard's looking out the side window and he says, "Should those guardrails be this close to us?" There's a bomb down the road, the wrong side of the road. He talks about it another time. I was trying to get Howard up here, but he wouldn't do it. He talks about another time they were drinking their wobbly pops and they decided they were going to climb that tower down there in Turk Creek. You know that one that's McFadden line. Anyway, any of you guys heading south, we only had one tower. So they're climbing that big tower. So he says, Glen gets out of the car and he's going up to the tower just like a little monkey. Harold's next, not so, just cautiously. Howard gets up about 2 feet off the ground and he decides he can't do this. Like, he can't do it. So he yells up to Harold and he says, "I can't do this." So Harold yells up to Glen, "Glen, come on down, we can't do this." So they come down, there's a couple more wobbly pots, and they decide, "Oh, well, they're going up." So I guess they all made it to the top. But Glen, he has to be a little bit different. So he decides he's going to crawl out in one of those arms, or I'm going to call them arms, they're about that big. So he's out there, and Howard said it was one of the few times he was really, really scared. Because he knew if Glen's hand slipped, boom! And look at all the laughing and the memories and that we would have lost at the same time. That was the boys. So we did really fun things as young people. So once a year, some of these things we could only do once a year. So once we decided we were going to go stealing some corn. I wanted to have a corn. Howard says, "Grandma and Grandpa have corn." And we weren't any fools. We knew that you did not pick the corn at the road because that was for the cats. The nice sweet corn was up by the house. So we parked the car and we're all jumping out and going sneaking out through the cornfield, get up by the house, and Meanwhile, behind us is this, the fence was, and we were supposed to be quiet, sneaking. Anyway, all of a sudden, we hear, Herb, get the gun! The coons are in the corn! Howard says, run! We're all moving back to the car. Glen's hung up on the fence. So fences then had these spaces, you know. He had somehow got his foot in there and he lost his shoe. Anyway, there's one thing I'm afraid of with guns. They're just a bootener. And I think I got about a foot in front of the fence, jumped over, landed on the other side, and like, you sucker, you're on your own. A couple of his buddies stopped and got him into that mess. Then we decided we were going to go sucker fishing. Now there's actually a fish called a sucker. So yeah, anyway, we were going sucker fishing, and the whole idea was that some guys would get into the creek and they'd chase the fish down, and there'd be other people down there with nets catching them. And this particular time when we got there, there'd be, oh my God, about 40 people standing along the creek bank already. And Joanne and I were standing on the bank, and we had our little flashlights. These guys had these big honking lights, and they were all lit up, and the guys started coming down and then fell in the water. Joanne says, hang on guys, there's a big one coming down. And poor Glen, like, he couldn't get footing, like those rocks were so slippery, like he just couldn't. Oh, and the guy who had this monster light, he said, you know that guy? Nope, we're not going to do it. So we go home and don't ask me whose house this particular incident. Glen always said he had to go and drain his python, so he's our cover. And he comes in through the door, and he's got this big sucker in his hand. Well, what's up? He says, have you ever seen one of these things smoke a cigarette? I certainly had never seen it. So he puts it on the counter, and just his head, you know, with this much of his head was hanging over. Lit a cigarette and put it in. It was the funniest thing I'd ever seen in my life. Just the way the sucker was sucking, you know, like puff, puff, puff. And we had about 3 of them going, and somebody finally, actually I was able to pull that same stunt with my ball team many years later. You know, light up the cigarette and puff. But anyway, the guys finally decided they were going to scale some of these suckers and throw them into a pan. And actually, some of the pieces smelled like they were, or tasted like they were smoked. That's more than fish. Okay, so party, yeah, party. We like to go, we ended up with Sammy J. Manella's a lot. He was a cool guy, he could play the guitar, he sang a million songs, especially Saginaw, Michigan. The guys wanted to sing that 100 times every party. But at the time, there was a comedian out who had this tune out, and it was called The Street. And the main, it was about a guy and his wife wrote, and this guy is streaking around. And the part that always made me laugh is he'd say, "Don't look, asshole!" So we're at Sammy J's, we're having this party, and when you went out at Sam's, you went out here, and then you had to make a thing like this to get out onto the ground. Pardon me, I was sitting there, and all of a sudden I heard, "Don't look, asshole!" And I looked out the window, and there was these 2 little bare eyes running down the street, nothing on but their boots. And that was a long hike, because they had to go down there, and they had to go buy packers and that. Anyway, there was a lesson there for me, because Glen taught me, or that's when I learned, that there were certain parts of the male anatomy that didn't do so good in the cold. So the kids move up to the wilderness there, and they come back home. And it must have been their housewarming party. Like, I don't really remember what we were all doing there, but Rita had this old piano in the living room, and eventually everybody would move into this living room. And I think I must have had to go to the washroom or something, because I was walking out, and Glen had made these 2 young people in the family the most beautiful looking drinks. They were all layered with different colors, and he was giving them, he was just standing in the straw, and he said, now, kids, and I was, oh, Glen, you're so sweet. Now, when you stick the straw right to the bottom of the glass, and as you're coming up, pull the straw up a little bit. So you get to the top, okay, now do it again. And do it again. Well, the kids got absolutely snookered. Because some of those layers were liquor. So Mama puts the kids to bed. That lesson wasn't for me though, because I'm telling you to this day, Shelley and Brian make really nice mixed drinks. Yeah, it's a party. Oh my gosh. So Glen got sick. And I'd call up, yeah, he's doing pretty good. Call up again, no, not bad day. Good, bad. And then I got the call that kind of put us on alert. Glen was in the hospital, and he'd probably passed that night. And the story was that he'd eaten supper and he just got feeling really sick. He went really fast. They called the ambulance, went to the hospital, and like it was going to be a matter of hours. So I got the call the next morning, 6 o'clock. Glen passed away. And oh my gosh. Well, Glen, is there a lesson here for me? Like, what's happening? There's got to be a lesson. And the light bulb went on. You eat supper at 6 and pass away before breakfast. Now, at this point in time, I'm supposed to walk over and pick up that urn. I tried, it weighs 500 pounds. Dana must have used some really heavy wood when he made that sucker, because I can't pick it up. But anyway, you guys, picture Glen standing beside me. I got my arm around the little toad, he's so skinny. I got my arm around. And I'm saying, Glen, you taught me a lesson way back when, and nobody has ever freaked me out about saying stuff about me since then. But we have a gambling group of females, and we're called the Gambling Grannies. So 2 days ago, we were together, and I was outside, I had my toque on, I was smoking a cigarette. And one of the grannies looked at me and said, you look just like Homer Simpson's wife. So Glen, finally somebody did just as good as you. I'll miss you, Glen. You were a good friend and a wonderful brother-in-law. You gave Rita lots of good times. You gave us lots of laughs. Love you, buddy. Who's next? Oh, you're not sweet. Now it must be Jerry. Woohoo.
Afternoon, everyone. Man, that crowd goes back a long way.
Doesn't it?
Yeah. Hope you can hear me. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jerry. I'm married to Becky, and so I'm an honorary Hummel. And I didn't know Glen for as long as many of you, but I've known him for 30 odd years, so I got to know him pretty well. So I thought that I would say a few words. And I was going to try and memorize some of this, but as you know, memory's not as good as it used to be. But Glen was first, I'm just going to read it, and Glen was first and foremost, he was a family man. He loved Rita and Stacy and his granddaughter Brianne, and he loved them with all his heart. The Hummels were a big family. By today's standards, they were a huge family. 8 kids. Moving a family of 10 multiple times was a challenge for all of them, and as Shelley was talking about, she went through some of those moves. And with Glen, either he was born to it or he grew into it. But either way, Glen was clearly the big brother, and he was well suited to that role. The 8 of them have a lot of love and respect for each other, but Glen had the unique position of being the eldest, and the other 7 really looked up to Glen, and you could really see that when you spent time with him. And he received a higher level of respect because of the man that he was. And when there was a family issue, you'd often hear from the brothers and sisters, well, what did Glen say? What does Glen think? And Glen's opinions really carried a lot of weight in the Hummel family. He loved all of his brothers and sisters, and he was always there for all of them. Glen, you know, for those that know him well, he had a rough, tough exterior. And, you know, let's be honest here, at times he could be downright snarly. And many times that snarl came out after a few Black Russians. But that wasn't the real Glen, really. He cared about everyone in his life. He came across as the tough guy. But I remember once I saw him cry when Don Green gave him a birthday present. So that tells you a lot about Glen. And he had a great sense of humor, as you know, Jackie, that was a hard act to follow. I didn't know Glen when he was that age, so you know, I didn't get to get in on a lot of that stuff. I was talking to to Howard, and they were telling me some stories about those same times. And I said, man, you know, I said, one of you guys got to go up there and tell some of those stories. But I even offered him $10 and But yeah, there were some good ones. And he had a great sense of humor. And Becky and I visited there a lot. And we were regulars, and we always had a lot of laughs. And some of the laughs were definitely at his expense, because he got up to some wild things and wild times, as we have heard. And I'll give you one example. I got to give you at least one. A few years ago, Becky and I, we gave Glen, we thought it'd be a good idea to give him a couple of marijuana plants.
Good idea.
And we thought, you know, this would be like a new interest for Glen, a new hobby, you know? And, you know, he had a few aches and pains at that time. We thought, you know, this could be the crop would be for medicinal purposes. But no one could have predicted the passion that Glen had for that new hobby. And I can tell you, I talked about medicine. He diligently took his medicine on a very regular basis. I won't say how regular. So we didn't see that coming, but you know what? Rita forgave us. You know? It wasn't our fault. But, you know, things got a little problematic with this whole situation. And finally, Rita laid down the law, and she took his very significant supply and she burned it in a fire pit. And that was the end of Glen's new hobby. He went for it, that guy, you know. If he was going to do something, he was going to do it. Later in his life, Glen had a few health problems. And when I say he was a family man, he truly was. Because he was content to stay home with Rita and the dogs, and Stacy and Brianne when they were visiting, and any other friends or family that dropped by. And that was enough for Glen. He was quite content with that, and he was very much a homebody, and he was really good with the whole thing. He told Becky and me a number of times that he would have been lost without Rita. And Rita really came through for him and supported him, and they were good together. And it was always a happy place to go. You know that every relationship brings us challenges. It was very clear that Glen and Rita, they really shared a deep love. And you could always see that being around them. And I know Rita told us that one of the last things that Glen said to her before he died, he said, "I had a good life." So I thought that was pretty good. And really, at the end of it all, what else can anyone hope for?
Meet again, Margaret. I forgot a couple of things. I'm not very good at this. I get all Anyway, it was with Glen. I had my first duty with Glen. And Jerry's right. There's something about that. You just keep, once you have your first one. But I found out why Glen was always sitting in the corner laughing. Sometimes by himself. But what Glen taught me was when you get too much of that stuff in your system, don't get scared. Don't get paranoid. Just sit back in a corner and have a party. I also missed while we were partying. Graw, I don't even know what her real name is. Graw would go away for weekends. And it was open house from Friday at 6 till Sunday afternoon, and then they'd open up the windows, run around empty ashtrays, pick up glasses, wash glasses, get rid of the beer bottles. And when she came into the house, they'd be sitting on the couch with a bunch of little angels watching TV. But at these parties, that's when I first found out who the Creedence Clearwater Revival was. Because all weekend, they would turn that music up and you could hear it for 14 country miles. And one of the tunes that he liked was, looking at my back door. So the boys are going to sing that for us now. And you're going to sing it with them. Excuse me.
Just got home from the road, locked the front door, oh boy. Got to step down, take a rest on the porch. Imagination sets in, pretty soon I'm singing. Looking out my back door. There's giants doing cartwheels, statue wearing high heels. Look at all the happy creatures dancing on the lawn. Dinosaur Tola, listen to Buck Owens. Looking out my back door. Tambourines and elephants are playing in the band. Won't you take a ride on the flying spoon? All is good tomorrow, the day I find no sorrow. Looking out my back door. Tambourines and elephants are playing in the band. Won't you take a ride on the flying spoon? All is great tomorrow, the day I find no sorrow. Looking out my back door. Forward troubles, Illinois, lock the front door, oh boy. Look at all the happy creatures dancing on the lawn. Bother me tomorrow, the day I find no sorrow. Looking out my back door.
So, Donnie Green could not be here with us today, so he videoed something for us to listen to. He was just there.
On you, Matt, up there yet? Oh, well, I can go back up.
No, it's okay. I'll find out where the video is.
Good afternoon, folks. I'm truly sorry that I couldn't be with you today. Unfortunately, my eyesight does not allow me to drive in the rain, and Ellen is a bit nervous about doing so also. Nevertheless, thank you, Rita, for the privilege of saying a few words about my cousin and lifelong friend, Glendon Robert Thomas Hummel, named after his two grandfathers, Bob Osborne and Tommy Hummel. If I had known that, I'd long forgotten, but cool regardless. Glen lived a good life his way, and the fact that we're all here today signifies that he was loved and will be remembered. What more can anyone wish for? In his early years, until the family moved to Maniwaki, Steve and Margaret and the kids lived across the street from us, and we were part of their family and they were part of ours. Glendon, Becky, Bonnie, Andy, and I all played together, but Glendon and Andy were best friends. I was always a bit envious of their relationship. When Andy was killed, Glen and Andy were both in their 21st year. Glen was devastated. His great anguish at Andy's death gave me my first insight into the deeply caring man who hid behind the tough guy facade. Although he didn't like to let on, in his heart he was a gentle soul. Somehow animals sense this. Whenever a stray dog showed up at the hunt camp, it ended up sleeping in Glen's bed. We spent many years together at the camp, telling lies and just enjoying being together. Steve, Dad, Glen, Jean, Timmy and I, and sometimes Kirby. Which brings me to a story. On this one occasion, after Glen had returned from his gold mining exploits in the Yukon, he was telling us about some of his experiences, including shooting a grizzly bear out the front of his tent while he was on his hands and knees. Scared the hell out of me, but as Glen told him, it was no big deal. But I'm wandering a bit, I guess, as old farts tend to do. The story I'm getting to had to do with a porcupine that Glen had shot, and being short on fresh meat, decided to eat. So Glen, being Glen, just threw it in the fire, cold, quills and all, and after the quills had burned off, sort of, he fished it out and somehow sawed off a chunk. So, after expressing our disbelief and disgust to some degree, I asked him how it tasted. He started to shrug it off, as he often did with most things, by saying, oh, it was all right. But I guess that was too much for even for Glen. And halfway through saying it was all right, he blurted out, it was just fucking awful. And he laughed so with that over the years. We had a lot of great years at the camp. It allowed us to get together once or twice a year, and I think it was as good for Glen and Steve as it was for Dad, Jane, Timmy, and I. In some respects, Glen did not have an easy life. While his mother and his grandmother doted on him, Margaret's personal problems and her early demise caused him and a lot of others a lot of pain, which I think he tried to hide behind a tough and rough exterior. After the death of his grandfather, Glen moved in with my Aunt Ida, his grandmother, who he called Raw. Never did understand that. He looked after her pretty much until she passed, leaving him alone again, and I think somewhat lost. And then he met Rita, who along with Stacy provided him with the unconditional love that we all seek, but so few find. It changed his life. He found a new energy, a new reason for living. He and Rita and Stacy embarked on new adventures across the country until they finally moved back home and settled on Roy Drive 30 plus years ago and have been there ever since. When Rita told me that they had been together for more than 50 years, I could not believe it. To me, Rita cannot even be 50 years old. I guess it's a matter of perspective and comparative age. In any case, I think Rita would agree that she and Glen and Stacy had some great times, along with some of the challenges that life brings to everyone. And I'm equally certain that Glen would agree he might not have made it without Rita and Stacy. It's so wonderful that Stacy is being here with her mom and dad when they needed her the most. I hope she knows how much her dad loved her and how proud he was of her. So in a way, this is the time to celebrate the family and the partnership that has survived and thrived for over half a century. If I may, I'll close by saying to Rita and Stacy, on Glen's behalf, what I think he might say were he here. So to Rita and Stacy, thank you for the time we had together. Remember me and the good times, and most importantly, take care of each other. We will certainly all remember Glendon Robert Thomas Hummel. I loved him, as did we all. May he rest in peace. Thank you.
So at this time, we ask if there's anyone else that would like to get up and share some stories about Glen. This is a great time to do that.
Terry, put your big boy pants on. Get up there.
You have a story? Great.
I'm Brandon Hummel. Uncle Glen was my uncle. I have a fond memory of being a child, and we went out to his bus, I remember, and he had this six-wheeler, and he let us kids go bombing around on this six-wheeler, and I must have been, I don't know, 8 tall. It was a long time ago. But I remember I had so much fun. I went to Uncle Glen, and I was like, Uncle Glen, when you die, can I have this six-wheeler? And he said, sure. And he even wrote it out on a little piece of paper. I will this six-wheeler, Brandon Hummel. You know, that was really nice of him. And then years and years went by. I believe my Uncle Trent was asking me, what are you looking to sell this six-wheeler? And he goes, this had, what, 20 years later or something. And he goes, well, you can buy it if you want, but when I die, that's Brandon's. And it blew to my mind. I actually remembered that so long ago. Yeah, he actually did end up giving it to me a few years ago. Yeah. You know, my stepfather rebuilt it from the ground up. And unfortunately, it got stolen. I feel really bad about that. But that was my fond memory of my Uncle Glen.
Anybody else with any stories they'd like to share? Okay, if not, Rita, there's a luncheon, right? Rita, lunch? Yep. So afterwards, there's a luncheon here for everybody to please go and have a bite to eat. And we're going to close it out with Paul and John singing the final song.
I wish Vince could be here, but he wouldn't come. So you're stuck with us, Vince Gill, so. Go ahead. I know your life on earth had trouble. Only you know the pain. You weren't afraid to face the devil. You were no stranger to the rain. So go rest high on that mountain. Some of your work on earth is done. Go to heaven mountain, before the Father and the Son. Oh, how we cried the day you left us, gathered round your grave to grieve. Wish I could see the angels' faces when they hear your sweet voice sing. Go rest high on that mountain. Son, your work on earth is done. Go to heaven shouting before the Father and the Son. Sing it with us. Go rest high on that mountain. Son, your work on earth is done. And go to heaven shouting before the Father and the Son. Go to heaven shouting before the Father and the Son.
Again. And eat.
Rita says it's time to eat.